Stress doesn't just wear you down, it rewires your brain. What if I told you that the way you're handling stress today could shape whether you remember your grandkids' names in the future? Hello and welcome to the Feel Better, Feel Great podcast. This is episode 167, the shocking link between stress and memory loss. In each episode of the podcast, we dive into the holistic health and functional medicine to empower you with knowledge you need to lead a healthier, happier life. I'm your host, Dr. Andrea McSwain. If you're new to me, please like, subscribe, and click the bell for this channel. Remember that the information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only. Please seek the advice of your physician with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health objectives. So I think the link between stress and memory loss is shocking. And the reason I think it's shocking is because people think when they have memory loss, it's just going to happen. Like I see patients come in all the time and they're like, oh, I am just going to have dementia like my mom and my grandma and blah, blah, blah. And I really respect the fact that they have this fear. But the fear is part of the problem. And the shock is that if they recognize the stress, they could greatly reduce their memory loss. It's in your control. And that's what's really important to remember. Also, I want you to know we have a very special person joining us. So Rochelle will be chiming in with her real world insights and other fantastic ways that she helps makes things great. So, stress can really hijack your brain. And I definitely understand that. And sometimes I live that. And I think it's really important for us to see when that's happening, and because it's part of overwhelm. And there's moments where it just kind of takes us over. And sometimes people talk about that when they are in overwhelm, or what's that when people say like, I just don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, or there's kind of an overwhelm of the moment. So they just kind of shut down. Well, that is your brain being hijacked. It's part of the fear. It's part of the chronic stress. And when we think about stress is a mechanism in the body, right? Stress is important to function in our body, but chronic high levels of stress do some really wacky things to our normal regulatory systems, like our blood sugar and inflammation and immune system and our hormones. What happens is chronic stress starts to just have all of those at full throttle. And then it actually leads to tissue damage. Now we're talking today about the damage that happens in the brain's memory center, which is the hippocampus, right? But you also have to realize that there's other parts of the brain that are in control when stress hijacks your brain. And that is the reptilian brain, or it's in the amygdala, and this is the fear-based thinking. And that's what we need to connect, is stress is about fear, but you can resolve it. Chronic stress is ongoing so much that it really deteriorates the body, the functions of the body, the organs of the body, and it deteriorates your life. That's when it really matters. When we're in this fear-based thinking, we don't have what people call neuroplasticity, right? Huge word, but really what it means is we don't have an adaptability to the situation. We're in fight or flight, right? We're in fear. We're in getting out of the situation or being highly reactive to the situation. And therefore, a lot of times when people are in chronic stress, they don't even really remember what happens because their brain doesn't have that ability to form and keep memories. So I think that we've all been there where something's been very stressful. We look back on it and we're like, I hardly even remember those details. You can think about sometimes like if you have little kids and you're at a birthday party and everything is just going, right? Or a holiday event, or we talk about this with brides and sometimes grooms where the bride's just like, I don't even know what happened, right? Like I have to watch the videos and see the pictures in order to have memories. That's because there's stress, right? And cortisol is more about staying in the moment to get out of the situation. But when it starts to be chronic, right, the long-term stress increases the inflammation. And when it's in the brain, it's called neuroinflammation. And then when the brain is inflamed, the brain is stressed. Because inflammation is chronic. Inflammation is our immune system saying something's on, full alert. And then that plays a major role in cognitive decline.
I think that we tend to see this a lot with our patients. They just feel like they're kind of like in like this eternal brain fog almost. But they're not old. Like they're people, in their 20s, 30s that are having these cognitive issues, and they don't know why. They just are having this like fog over all their memories, all of their like short-term memory loss, things like that they shouldn't be having. But it truly comes down to like adrenal burnout, like stress that was never been processed accordingly, or even like some form of emotional trauma that they haven't dealt with, and those all can affect their memory.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of things you said there that I want to break down, but I think I'm going to move into one part that you said. So first of all, let's talk about memory loss. So what does memory loss look like as it's progressing? As I said, you're in events, you don't really remember them. You have trouble remembering conversations. It gets more severe when people start missing appointments, or they're confused about kind of how everything is laid out. I was in a situation once with a friend's mother, and at this point I was already a doctor, but she had gone to the bathroom at this restaurant, and I accompanied her along with another family member, and it was a very unique bathroom because it had like troughs for the sinks instead of just a normal sink. And when we came out of the bathroom, she started to relay the story of how unusual the bathroom was, but in language that did not make any sense whatsoever to the people who had not been in the bathroom. So she started talking about horses. She had loved horses. I think at that time of her life she had spent a lot of time with horses, but people only heard something about horses being in the bathroom. And she wasn't talking about the horses. She was talking about the trough and how it was like where a horse went to drink. And so these things were very confusing, not just to her and how she displayed the information, but then how it was processed. I remember another time too, and maybe this is a little medical, but if you're in the medical field, or if you've ever had your blood drawn, the vials have different colors. So sometimes we put them all together, we call them the rainbow. And a rainbow is a bunch of the vials with a bunch of different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And so there was a woman in the ER, and the doctor said she's lost her mind. She is, and so I'm a doctor at this point too, listening to the story because it's someone we've been consulted for. And she said that someone was relaying to the group that she had said, quote, "I'm waiting for Moses to bring back the rainbow." And they're like, "We don't know what that means." And first of all, the phlebotomist was named Moses. And the rainbow was a whole bunch of tubes. So he must have gotten into her area, like her room, and recognized he didn't have the right vials. And so he had to return with the rainbow. And so Moses is coming back with the rainbow actually had meaning. Unless you didn't know what that meaning meant. And she was perceived as confused, but I don't really think she was exactly confused. I think she was just using very, very specific language. And so that can happen, though, in how people start to disconnect from standard communication, right? The other way they can do that is what I call looking for the loop. And you really want to start paying attention to this. I used to call my grandmother, my Nana, and I would stay on the phone for about 30 minutes. And, we always lived in different states, and that was fine. And my Nana and I had really nice conversations. But at some point, I remember distinctively when I started to hear the loop at 15 minutes, because I didn't see her regularly, and because I didn't have extended times where I was communicating with her. I didn't see the hour loop or the 30-minute loop. I didn't perceive those. But I started hearing the 15-minute loop. And so I started recognizing this as I observed my grandmother's decline, It's then started to decrease to 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and that level of disorientation. So I think about the loop, and just take a moment to think about someone who's around you, and if you have a concern for them, think to the loop. Now that's pretty advancing dementia or memory loss, but you can still do the work, right? There's a lot you can do there. And then, another example of kind of like more advanced is, I remember being out to lunch with a friend and her family. Her grandmother came with us almost because she had to. There was some reason. She was in a memory facility and her dementia was very severe. She was a very friendly person, but she was on a 5-second loop. And for that hour meal, she said, "Oh, where are we? This is so nice." Whatever 5 seconds is times an hour. And that's what she was looping. So that one was very obvious, right? But what we want to do is start recognizing those 15-minute loops or those 30-minute loops or those hour loops so that we can help people be able to recognize a reduction in the neuroplasticity as a part of cognitive decline, help them recognize if there is stress or some other factors, right? So this is really important. Now I want to speak to early memory loss. So Dr. Dale Bredesen is a MD PhD who wrote a book called The End of Alzheimer's. What I like that he says is he's really talking about subjective memory loss and obvious objective memory loss. And I would say definitely recognizing if you are having stress and you're having some forgetfulness, but don't necessarily recognize it as normal, right? Don't categorize it as normal. Like I will tell you today, I had very little sleep last night. My dog decided to have shenanigans and he had to chase a bunny that was in our yard basically every hour throughout the night. Now, I still was dedicated to my exercise class this morning because 1, I paid, and 2, I have to go because I feel like if I stop once, I'm going to stop. Like, I'm never going to go again, right? So, that's how I feel. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this exercise class and I'm committed to that, but I was tired. And I know today as I'm presenting things, I'm tired. And this is just from the night of not getting adequate sleep because my loving dog that I do really love decided that he needed to territorialize the yard because of a bunny nesting. So I'm actually not really upset that this is getting recorded like this, and I'm a little jumpy because I had probably a little too much caffeine, not enough water, and not enough to eat. And, I'm excited about doing the podcast. So all those things kind of come in with a little bit of stress that make me kind of a little bit jumpy and jolty and not remembering Dale Bredesen's name right off the top of my head. Okay, well, I'm going to sleep tonight and tomorrow I'm going to feel fine. In fact, I probably take a nap this afternoon because I don't really want to be wired. I don't want to get into a cycle, even a small cycle of being wired and then being too wired to sleep and being wired and tired and having that effect tomorrow. So wherever you are in the moment, you can recognize and you can thwart what's going on, So again, I'm just recognizing it, sharing it with you, and then kind of telling you my plan because I'm not going to not recognize it. It's annoying actually. But anyway, those are different, obviously, because it's short-lived. I have a lot of capacity for neuroplasticity on most days, but I definitely got it handed to me last night. And you might have those days too. And if, that's one thing. But if I were to be like this all the time, right, then I'd be in a high state of stress. So that's also different than looking at neurodegenerative red flags, right? Neurodegenerative red flags are, not recognizing family members, being afraid to go out because you don't have social norms anymore. And those are some significant neurodegenerative red flags. So also if you're a caregiver, right? So I guess you could say in some respect I was a caregiver last night when my wonderful dog, who is part of our production crew, he's in his bed right now, is lending helpful, support by laying around. But that's definitely a burden but more seriously when people are caregivers for a long-term situation, as my grandmother was to my grandfather for 10 years. And I could watch how much that really played a toll on her life. So if you are a caregiver in our practice, we try to actually do nice things for you. And also, when I'm taking care of someone and the caregiver is the person who actually has to do the work, I'm really cognizant as a practitioner to recognize I don't need to add one more thing for that caregiver to do. So I really try to look for an exchange of what is happening and how we can make an adjustment to make it easier for them. And if you've ever read The 30-Hour Day, this talks about caregiver burnout. And that's important because caregivers often end up having more problems with people who have memory loss than the people having the memory loss because they're doing double duty. So, if you're a caregiver, this is always really important to think about.
You're talking about the neurodegenerative red flags, and one big one that we do see with some of the families that are managing some early stage memory issues is asking like the same question multiple times during the day. I can kind of recall even in my family of this happening, and a lot of times the reaction is usually like, oh, I'm just getting old, like I'm gonna ask that question. But I think there's definitely a bigger issue, and if you can start to navigate it now and know that this is an early stage memory issue, then you can start working to fix that instead of declining, essentially.
And every day memory killers are there, right? So today I have my memory killer. What is it? Getting really bad sleep, really disrupted sleep, almost like I had a newborn. And at 47 years old, I do not have a newborn. And I was just thinking about that today. Like, oh my gosh, how did I have a newborn and I was in an OB-GYN residency and I was able to function? So people talk about multitasking as a memory killer. Remember, getting interrupted when you're supposed to be something that's very high level thinking, that can be a memory killer. But if you're multitasking actually, and you're just kind of going and doing, and you're getting really organized because it's a multitask, right? So, but don't think you can really use that brain as a big muscle and then do a bunch of things and be disrupted. And you need to understand the difference because people talk about multitasking as if it's like doing two things at the same time is bad. It's not. Doing two really hard, cognitive, things that require a lot of strategy and then getting interrupted, that is bad. That won't drive your train very quickly. So think about that. The other thing is blue light, right? Blue light, screens, this will disrupt your circadian rhythm. And that is how your brain helps you heal at night. And one of the ways it does is actually with melatonin. And melatonin is a powerful antioxidant. It's a powerful sleep aid, sleep healing aid. We need to detox our brains at night. And our brains heal with sleep, as I clearly feel this morning. Also remember that everyday memory killers can be going hard on no food. Okay. And a lot of people, really they get away from the idea of having carbs. And I think you could definitely want to appreciate ultra processed foods and processed foods, but our body relies sometimes on not completely naked carbs, but simpler carbs that are combined maybe a little bit with fats, proteins, fiber, things like that, like fruit. But our brain is a muscle that needs sugar. And I've definitely found that using my brain in clinic, or listening to my patients talk about not being able to use their brain for more than 30 minutes before they just shut off. And I talk to them about that because I want them to keep going. I want them to really be able to understand how to develop their cognitive abilities. And for our podcast members, we have that information in our Mindset mini course because it's really a critical appreciation of how to keep going. So check that out if you're a podcast member, or ask us for more information if you want to become a podcast member. And then as an element of your brain as a muscle that needs sugar or, blood sugar, we talk about there's insulin resistance, right? And blood sugar dysregulation. These damage cognitive function. And you can see that when people take a lot of sugar in, right? We saw that especially with, oh my gosh, my daughter was the worst when she was 5. She says she has her devil period. She says 5 and 12. At 5, she would she would just go berserk. And finally occurred to me that she was having hypoglycemic episodes. And her blood sugar was just spiking and tanking. She was really trying to live off simple carbs because that's what 5-year-olds like to do because they want all that energy. And then all of a sudden when their blood sugar tanks, they become absolutely horrible, right? So she had no cognitive function, just absolutely primal, fear-based thinking. She was just having a really awful sugar spike. We are going to talk about that, not in a 5-year-old, but we're going to talk about that as we have aging in our bodies. And that's going to be the topic of our next episode. So stay tuned for that because it's really a little more complex than what we can get into right now. But it definitely matters that you understand this because your brain is the master control center, right? And then again, of course, we're going to talk about brain fog with memory killers. So alcohol is a brain killer, a toxin, liver, sugar and processed foods, particularly ultra processed foods, which are basically just chemicals kind of clumped together in some kind of bag that's delivered to you for a price. So there are a lot of everyday memory killers, and think about what's killing your memory in the day.
I was thinking about this recently because we were talking last week or something. We were talking about how I've been multitasking a lot, and I've had these spurts of forgetting where things are. Specifically, I lose my phone about 100 times a day, it feels like, and just losing things that are right in front of me, or I walk up the stairs and I don't remember why I went up there, things like that. And I kind of started to realize that, that memory is very nutrient hungry. So your body needs, sleep, hydration, blood flow, and all those things to even be able to think and think about anything. So I started to kind of do a little bit of a fixing of that, and it's been a lot better. But I think that is a huge thing for people when it comes to just day to day, especially with dependent on their job, dependent on a working parent, things like that, where they're not only going and working for the day, but then they have to come home and continue to work and continue to be a caregiver and things like that. So to have that multitasking and not being able to shut your brain off, I think it's really important to remember that as an everyday memory killer, that you're losing your memory because you're not keeping yourself healthy, and you're not watching what your body needs specifically. So I think it's really important to keep an eye on these everyday things.
What are some brain-saving rituals? First of all, breathing, right? So breathing really connects us to the flow within our body, and it helps regulate the different patterns of our body. And I really encourage people to exhale first. Deflate. Just take a moment. A lot of times that moves you away from hyperventilation. It calms the central nervous system. When people talk about inhalation first, they're really upping the level of stress in the body. They're pushing the boundaries. So exhale first and just feel how that feels. And what happens is your body will just naturally take in the next inhale. And that is a reset. That is something, please just think about that. When you get into the car, when you're at a red light, before you get out of the car, when you're brushing your teeth, after, it's where you're stirring the pot at the stove. Just deflate with that exhale. You might feel tinglies right away. The other thing is, what are you eating? And make sure to get those healthy calming fats, add those oils on top of your vegetables after they've been cooked, right? So after they've been cooked, make sure you get that avocado oil or that olive oil, these good, healthy, calming fats for your brain. The other thing is, got to move, right? Moving is feeling good, right? It's not always overdoing it. Moving is feeling good. You want those just the natural ways that our body's designed to actually make our brain function better. And exercise increases that. In fact, I don't know where I would be today if I hadn't gone to exercise class. It gave me a tremendous amount of focus. It allowed me to move, to process, to go, and just really feel strength from that. So I feel better, and I knew that I would, even though I was really tired. And I just told myself, hey, however I move is going to feel good in my body. And because I'm tired and was awake a lot of the night, I don't have to do anything crazy. I didn't have to push it. I just had to show up. And sometimes that's enough with your brain. You just have to show up, and that will really help save your brain. Another one is, again, I just like that exhale. You really want to get into parasympathetic mode. Some people take that a little bit farther. They get into nature. They're able to stretch or practice yoga gently, prayer, journaling, finding a space that exists within their own body to get some recovery. And then sometimes too, if people want to fast track some things, we talk sometimes about different supplements that protect and support your memory. There's definitely there's key supplements. First of all, your brain is a tissue, it's an organ. So we have kind of the basics that are really fundamental. But for some people who they really want to kickstart that memory regain, and we have seen that in 70-year-olds who have done this, 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds, they take something called Memory Forte. And it has within it a key supplement, key product that is called Heparzine. It also has Bacopa, right? But it has Heparzine. And Heparzine is an ability to affect the neurotransmitters that are critical for memory and learning. So the more you have of these neurotransmitters, right? Neurotransmitters, brain transmission, you have better memory encoding and retrieval. And that's what we see. People just start to I can access that. Yep, I can access that. It's also neuroprotective. So it reduces oxidative stress and it supports the mitochondria, which is very important. Additionally, Heparzine can cross the blood-brain barrier. And that's really important when you're trying to affect brain health. So we've also seen studies that improve cognitive performance in Alzheimer's patients and healthy adults with memory concerns. But I will tell you, very few things have actual studies that show improvement in cognitive performance in Alzheimer's patients, because even the medications are just something to do. But this is actually has an effect, and it improves cognitive performance even in someone who's having some significant problems. And the reason is because, going back to my original comment, you can be in control of how your brain works. You are in control of how your body works, and you can do things to be in control no matter where you are in that progression of memory loss or cognitive performance.
Yeah, I love that we can actually offer a supplement for somebody who is experiencing these early stages of memory loss or whatever, and they can get results. And right. It's an easy thing to just start to do to get some results for this, and then to help them throughout their life.
So again, memory's not a given. We have to protect the muscle, and stress, especially when it's chronic, becomes a significant enemy to the brain. So it's important to assess your stress level, assess the factors that have created your stress level, like I talked about today. And then, what's that daily habit that's going to change, or when that one supplement that's going to support really getting this, to get this better. Obviously, I want you to reach out, visit drmcswain.com to get ways to reduce stress in our 3-day inflammation reset guide. Again, for our podcast members, check out our mini course on mindset, giving you ways to lower stress and protect your memory. I'm Dr. Andrea McSwain. It's been my pleasure to share the ins and outs today of this really impressive link between stress and memory loss. What happens in our lives every day, and then what can happen over time to really make us have the best cognitive performance well into our 80s, 90s, and healthy at 100. Thank you.